Welcome to the Fantasy Grimoire podcast. And today we have Rebecca with us. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
You were looking for beta readers. And I was like, I volunteer as tribute, pick me girl energy. And then you said yes, even though you didn't know me at all. And then I beta read for you. So why don't you tell us what made you decide to give me a chance, because you didn't know me from a bar of soap? And how did that beta process end up looking for you on your debut novel?
Yeah. So how did I see you bubble to the surface? I think like you're a writer, so that automatically gives you an edge in like beta reading because it is so critical in terms of giving critical feedback. And yeah, I think that you had beta read before, if I remember correctly, on the form, which is like another check mark that you kind of knew what you were in for. And we had been mutuals for like 6 months maybe or more. So I felt like, we interacted with each other's things. It's like you kind of knew what I was about. You weren't going in like totally unawares of what it would be, which was really like all the criteria I needed to meet. And then, I think the beta reading process, I remember yours specifically because I sent everybody a Word document, and then you asked me to send you a Google document that you could leave comments in that I owned, so I would get the notifications. So for like the 2 or 3 weeks that you read it, like I would just get these emails and like I get to read all of your some of your comments were like so funny, and some of them were just like critical pieces on the story, which is like obviously what you're looking for at the beta stage. But that was really fun because I think at the beginning, and I could sense this in your comments too, there's this like you're not sure yet where the story's going to go, if it's going to really gel with you, mesh. So I could see that in your comments, and then something clicked and you were like, oh yes, I'm in it. So like that was fun to see. So it's like some of my process with other beta readers was a lot of people sent me back a document. They didn't, I wasn't included in like live feedback. So I didn't really get to see like the reading process, which was kind of what I was expecting. And honestly, I had no experience doing beta reading before, so I didn't know how I should or shouldn't do it. So I might do it differently like next time, but that was my experience. So some people just sent me back, they sent me back basically like an edit letter, or they sent me back a document full of comments plus like some final thoughts. But yours, I got to read the comments live, and I felt like I was like on this journey with you reading my book for the first time.
I hear your point on there's no right or wrong way to do it. And it's really, especially when you're the author, what is your vision? What suits you as the author? And how can we help you find the best version of that story? So like feedback I've given in the past is that if you want me to focus more on grammatical things, I'm not your person. Like, then this is not a fit. If you want me to focus more on the story and the pacing and does this make sense, pick me energy again. So there have been authors in the past where they have focused more on that. I'll be like, you know what, I don't want to waste your time there. I'd rather have you focus on a beta that is maybe more suited to your needs there. So it's just really interesting to hear you explain that, because I do remember your story and I know exactly which part you're talking about. And when it flipped for me and I was like, what is happening?
I think it'll be a moment a lot of people, so switch flips for a lot of people.
Especially being in the epic romantasy space, I do understand that there's quite a bit of world building that you need to establish in the beginning before you can actually get into the action part, for lack of a better word. And I remember that flip and I was like, oh damn, she went in here. So yeah, I'm really excited about this release, which is actually the perfect introduction to, why don't you tell us about Darker Than the Starless Night?
Yeah, this is great practice for me because I'm like hilariously bad at pitching my own book, which I learned during querying. But it's, at the end of the day, it is an epic romantic fantasy. I say it's perfect for fans of Six of Crows and One Dark Window. I would say the genesis of the idea is something more of like a cross between Arcane or Peaky Blinders and Song of Achilles, but I wouldn't I wouldn't pitch those as comp titles. But that's just to give a sense for like the atmosphere. And anyways, it's about a morally gray chemist girl who has to reluctantly team up with a goody two-shoes library boy to save the world from her boss. So they set out on this adventure. There's reluctant allies. There's a lot of nods to Princess Mononoke, which is one of my favorite Studio Ghibli movies. There's queer characters. There's some bi panic that is going to drastically extend into future books. And yeah, that's the gist of it.
So I actually have a little bit of a, let's call it naive question. I've seen you use bi panic as a trope. And obviously I can put two and two together what it means, but I'd love to hear you explain it in your words. What actually is that trope about? Because you're the first person I've heard use it.
Yeah, so as a trope, it's kind of tongue-in-cheek. I would say the romance and the love aspects of this book are second to the plot. The plot is intertwined with my character's kind of like internal journey that she goes on, but the bi panic is mostly speaking to the existence of a love triangle, but also just the bi panic in general is mostly speaking to if you're attracted to everybody, then you're kind of just panicking all the time because everybody's hot. But in this specific instance, my main character Yam she has a childhood love named Lior, who is this like beautiful femme girl who she remembers in just like the palace of her mind. She has just like immortalized this girl, and she meets Kia, who's the male main character, and she hasn't really felt an emotional connection like what she felt for Lior until she meets him. I mean, there's some bumps along the road, but like that's where they eventually end up. And so the panic is kind of like she has these two options. I mean, who knows if Lior is an option? We don't really know what happened to her, but yeah.
The love I have for Yama as a character, though, because she's not your traditional, oh, I'm Miss Goody Two Shoes and look at me, all good. I just love the depth that you created with Yam. I felt this instant connection to her. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, because it has been a while since I've read it. Yeah. But she's got quite a depth of her own trauma that she's trying to work through as well. And who's to say this is the right way you work through your trauma? Sure, we all make mistakes and whatnot along the way, but that's what makes Yam so relatable as a character, in my opinion.
Yeah, I have had that comment from a lot of people. I think it's getting better, like getting more depth and nuance in female characters, but I do think it has been a shortcoming in the fantasy genre. I mean, because we started off with like male-driven fantasy, where it's like the women are just sexually assaulted and or like really horrendously beautiful in a way that just, mystifies, casts a spell on like the male main character. You know what I mean? So it's like we started there. We're now getting into fantasies being driven by women now because we like to drive the consumer economy, which is wonderful. So now we get to write the books. And now I think we're creating our own identity for women. And I mean, it gets so meta when you think about like, internalized misogyny, and it's like we write characters without depth, even though we are women, but like we can't give depth to our characters sometimes. So I even find myself falling into these pitfalls sometimes that I try to like bring like a new angle to something. Like, she's not just promiscuous, she's promiscuous for a reason. She's hypersexualized because she's has trauma or, something like that. Kind of like asking what's happening to these people, even if they are falling into more stereotypical tropes for women in fantasy, if that makes sense.
It does. And I love listening to your thought process as you kind of reason through that, because I'd love to see more and more of that online. I mean, hell, it's one of the reasons why I've started this podcast, is because I wanted to give people in the book space more of a platform to share those thoughts, because I think it's so important. Books are evolving, our requirements are evolving, and I think it's important that we make that journey a little bit more transparent. What was your inspiration for Darker Than the Starless Night, and what prompted you to start with that one first? Because I know that you have a few manuscripts kind of hiding in the wings.
Yeah. Okay. I have to lay out all the sources because it's kind of like a long and winding, circuitous, nonlinear road. But I've always wanted to write a book. And as a kid, I took Latin for many, many years. And I really loved it. I used to do this thing called curtamen, which is some might call it a sport. It's like Latin quiz bowl. So you have a team of a fellow Latin nerds, and this is, imagine me, this is like 7th and 8th grade Rebecca, like going into school cafeterias at night and classrooms where the tournaments are held, and you're like playing against other schools that also have Latin teams. That was my life. Like in 7th and 8th grade, I was really into it. And when you take Latin, it's not like Spanish where you can practice conversation and like learn about culture. It's like you learn about history because it's a dead language, unfortunately. And so you're like learning history. You're learning history through learning the language, and you're reading crazy things. Like you're reading Cicero's own speeches in the language they were written, and you're reading like Pliny's account of Pompeii falling, like that he wrote in Latin, like while he was watching it happen. So very cool stuff. So I feel like I've always, when people say like, this is my Roman Empire, I have always been very into the Roman Empire. And I also think, so Roman history has different periods. So there's a Roman monarchy, which is actually arguably one of the bigger influences over like the empire for my book's world building. But Rome started as a monarchy. It had 7 kings, and then it switched to a republic because the kings did some bad stuff, and then the people revolted, and then it switched to a republic, and then everybody knows it switched from a republic to an empire. So the periods that were of more interest to me were like the monarchy and the republic in terms of the government. But then I've always had in the back of my mind, like the Roman Empire, a lot of names that we know for places come from the Latin name for them during Roman occupation. Like Spain is it's a Latin name, that Hispana was the name of it in back in the day when it was under Roman control. So anyways, all of that history, this idea of Europe, Christianity not in the picture, like that's all been very fascinating to me. And then in college, that kind of like alchemized with taking a Mesoamerican history class and learning about empires, the rise and fall of civilizations and empires in Mesoamerica, which it's been like a really long history. And there's many different peoples and civilizations that have risen and fallen, all of which is fascinating. And then that story obviously kind of gets stopped artificially by the arrival of the Spanish. So a really interesting question to me was like, what if the Spanish, like the rise of Christianity, if that had never happened? And in addition to that, if the passage between these two places, the old world and the new world, I'm doing air quotes if anybody can't see my video, between those two places did not exist, like it was not possible. So what if these two, basically like these two societies were able to grow up without interacting with each other? Because it's like they use all different tools and materials and landscape and flora and fauna. Like it's all different. And I mean, some of it is the same because at one point they were like one piece of land, which is again a spoiler for how the book's world building goes. But yeah, so those were like really interesting questions that were kind of like living in my mind. Like just because I think of so much of fantasy and so much of everything is kind of like Eurocentric. So we forget that there was an entire history of architecture and technology and culture, that existed before it.
So first of all, I think you've just blown my mind in the best way, because that is so interesting. It's going to release number 4. We have Monty on. She creates her own languages, and she admitted to me afterwards that she had to rein herself in because I asked her to explain the thought process of conlang. That's what it's called. Yeah. And she was like, someone asked me about conlang. Can you stay calm? So I love it when people share knowledge like this, because I think it's fascinating and I love learning that way. So never hold back from sharing that. But I think just looking at what I've experienced on, my travels since moving to Europe, I think the parts of history that I've learned about that, I thought I learned about it at school, but then I learned about it on my travels afterwards. I can kind of see how you got to that because, for example, Portugal and South Africa have a very, I almost want to say, interconnected history, right? But then I learned about parts of like the Knights Templar. We went to that on tour, and we learned about the Holy Grail and all of those things. And to actually understand how old the history is here and when it, as you said, diverged into the different points.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. I visited Teotihuacan when I went to Mexico City in 2022, which was right around when I started like really seriously writing the book. And it just blew my mind. There were like, there's so many ruins in all of Mexico and into South America, but it's like the pyramid of the sun and the moon is Teotihuacan, and it has like this huge long avenue between them, and there's other pyramids, and there's like plazas, and there's a lot of stuff, but these pyramids were huge. It's insane. I've never visited the pyramids in Egypt, but I do know that the Egyptians did not build nearly as many pyramids as the people in Mexico did. I mean, the Mayans built, I think, the most pyramids, but the Aztecs also built pyramids. Yeah, I went to Chichen Itza like a year ago now, and that was really crazy because that one, they built so much math into it, and like there's a lot of numbers involved, and it's just like really fascinating. I mean, it's just like amazing to think about what we would be capable of if we didn't have phones and we like just use the stars and stuff. Like, be much smarter, I think.
You actually brought up Pompeii earlier. So it was also around 2022 where I visited for the first time. And I still remember our tour guide showcasing one of the houses. It was kind of like a leftover like takeaway thing where they would keep food warm. And they were actually just showing us how, even though this was 2,500 years ago, pretty modern actually.
They would have like restaurants with like, there's like a counter that you go up to and serve yourself food. Yeah. And
I was like, so if they could do this 2,500 years ago, wow. Like Italians were onto something.
They were not the toilets, but they were actually cleaner than a lot of people. And the Romans developed a lot of technology that we still use today, like cauterizing wounds.
I've touched on this already, but I want to understand your thoughts on this. In the epic fantasy field specifically, we see this being dominated a lot by male authors, your Tolkiens, your Martins, your Sandersons, and all of that. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think we're undergoing a change right now. I do think that women are taking up a lot of space in a good way. I think it's a great question. I want to know. I think it's kind of hard. It's similar to, I think I know you know that I studied physics, and like there's some self-selecting there where if you're in a field surrounded by men and you have one professor who's a woman and she's like, in no way can you see yourself in her, it makes it hard to envision getting to that point. So I think it is sometimes like a lack of role models. In consulting, in business in general, like they've basically made it so that entry-level employees are split pretty equally by gender. Like they're hiring as many women as they're hiring men, but it doesn't change the fact that like 70+% of the partner level is men. And like, why is that? And so even if you account for the fact that like there's some lag time with like making sure that the entry level has parity, it's still like something that they see when they've like looked into this, at least at one of the firms that I worked at, is that men come up in wolf packs and women are kind of like lone wolves, which I don't see in fantasy right now, which it makes me very happy to see so many women supporting women. But I could definitely see that happening in the past in a male dominated space where men are basically helping each other. It becomes like an old boys club. I experienced this in consulting. It's like my coworker can talk to his manager about football and they bond, and then he gets promoted because he has a great relationship with his manager, and it's like, I don't have that. I'm like grasping at straws to relate to this 40-year-old man who's in charge of my career progression, So I think that could be part of it. I also do think that it's changing, but like all things, it takes a lot of time for women to take up the space that they deserve to take up when they don't have the role models to look up to doing that as well.
If I think of my experience in the consulting space, I can see exactly what you're talking about there, where my client that I've just finished working for, so I am a full-time consultant and they just sent me to different clients.
Yeah.
It was definitely a male-dominated industry, let's go with that. And it was quite ironic funny, where I had two of the men that were kind of on my level coming to me asking why I never got into trouble for saying no, but they always got into trouble and were told they were too negative. So for me, that's when I started realizing that, okay, maybe something is starting to shift, because now they're getting into trouble, not me. And then I started kind of guiding them, saying, okay, cool, if you can't just say no, like you have to say no, X, Y, Z. You back it up with a good reason. And if you stick to logic, 9 times out of 10, people don't have a problem with it. If you just go no because you want to be a bitch, well, good luck with that approach. It rarely ever works.
Especially if you're a woman.
Exactly. And that's the thing. We've had to learn that. We've had to learn how to negotiate our way out of those situations. And that's why a lot of the time when we put that argument forward, we're going to come out successful, because we've had to go through those harder times.
Yeah, I had to learn quickly how to kind of like hold my own and develop a little grit. But I mean, yeah, if you're 22 and you're writing, and I feel like it's a very impressionable time. Like someone says one thing to you that that is on them and that they shouldn't have said, but it can stay with you for years.
Fully agree. And I will be honest with you, I was a complete idiot at 22. I can't speak for everyone else. So I think I was more impressionable than the average 22-year-old. But Rebecca, your double STEM degree, that, I think when I saw that about you, I squealed, because I only have a high school diploma, okay? And I never had access to a tertiary education. So I think that's why I'm always eager to look for more opportunities to learn. And that's maybe why I'm such a geek about these things. So I was like, classic overachiever. She didn't just go for one, she went for two. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your degree, what made you go that direction, but then why you decided to go in a different direction with your day job?
I mean, how long do you have? Because it's a long story. Let's see. I took an AP physics class my senior year of high school. At like advanced placement. It's basically it's supposed to be a college level class. And that's when they start teaching you calculus-based physics, which is when physics actually gets interesting. Before that, it's really rather boring. And so I took this class, and I was like, you know what? This is kind of interesting. Like literally, I applied to University of Illinois one day as an undecided major. You have to apply with a major. I don't know why. You can change it later. But I applied as undecided. And then 2 days later, I applied to University of Michigan as a physics major. And I just in those 2 days just woke up and I was like, you know what, why not just do this? This is like October of my senior year of taking this class. So that was kind of like always my North Star. I just knew I liked it. I don't really know why, other than I have very vivid memories of watching The Universe on PBS as a kid and learning about like neutron stars or whatever, which is funny because I ended up not really being that interested in astronomy or astrophysics. But that was like in my childhood. I always really liked space. And then, so I came to college somehow having decided to study physics. And then I had, multiple identity crises, and I almost tried to switch my major or do like a bunch of other stuff. I had a phase where I thought I might do nuclear engineering, and I'm like, why would I ever want to do that? I don't want to be an engineer. So luckily I stayed the course. And I added the math major because at my school, I ended up going to Michigan, and at Michigan, the math department has a double major track that makes it very easy to do a double major. So it was a double major in math, but it was like, I want to say 8 math classes I didn't have to take for the physics degree and for like my degree in general. So, I mean, it's not no small number, but it was just to give you a sense of like, it was a double major meant for like double majors. And yeah, I loved it. I ended up I spent a semester working at CERN in college in my junior year, like a research internship program. And it was very cool being at CERN, but I realized like, there are a lot of freaking nerds. Like, I don't know that I like physics this much to like be drinking beer at 8 p.m. in the CERN cafeteria, like talking about it with other people. Like, it's fun, but I'm not going to be the grad student life. It was like a lot of being alone, a lot of like self-driven research, intrinsic motivation. None of these things are super strong suits for me. I really thrive on external praise. So I was just like, I think I need more of like a team atmosphere. So that was kind of that internship while I was there. I mean, it was fun. I was like living in France. And it was a time. But like while I was there, I was applying to internships for the summer and I was like, I'm going to get something not in science, not in academia. So I worked at a bank in New York for a summer. And then I was like, this is a good direction. So then that's what brought me I got into consulting. And then I hated consulting for aforementioned reasons. I worked with one woman who really did a number on me, unfortunately. I don't want to call her not a girl's girl because I don't know if it's a girl's thing to say, but she was not very nice to me. And she told me I had to like do my hair and put on makeup. And I was like, I don't do those things. I don't need to look polished. This guy sitting next to me just showers every day and he gets promoted. Like, why can't I? So anyways, I didn't love consulting. Honestly, that was not even the reason. It's like long hours. I had to live out of a hotel like 3 nights a week. It was a lot. And so again, on a whim, I hope you're noticing a pattern here. I liked art way back in the day in high school before college because I didn't really get to take art classes in college. I was like, graphic design is like art, right? That they pay you to do. So I have a friend who is a graphic designer. And so she had pointed me to portfolio schools, which are like training programs to get a portfolio, which is all you need to get a job as a designer. You don't actually need a degree. Yeah. At least you didn't back in the day. So yeah, that was how I kind of got into design. And then design has been my forever home career-wise. I love like being a creative for a living. And I've gone down a path in design into user experience design where it still feels a little bit like consulting. It's like a little bit strategic. I get to kind of like use my head more so than just like some designers end up having to just do a lot of production, like a lot of just making things. You don't get to be involved in like the strategic conversations. So that's the path that I've gone down now. And this one is the one that has luckily allowed me to write in my free time. Like I've had enough time to write. And I mean, it's been slow at times.
I think I've told you that my day job is product management, right?
No, I didn't know that. That's so fun. Oh my gosh.
But I completely fell into that by accident because when I left school, that your options were become a lawyer, teacher, or a doctor. And I mean, okay, fine. I was smart enough for them. I just wasn't interested. And for me, that's an important distinction. Yeah. And my mom was like, okay, cool. I actually don't care what you do. Just I need you to finish school. She's like, if you can do that, I will stay off your case. So I was like, cool. Good chat. And I kind of jumped around into a few different industries. And back then, it wasn't product management. Your options were in the ad space to either go into project management or account management. So I was like, well, account management's boring. I'm not doing that. I'll do the other one. Yeah. And it's just kind of evolved into what we now know as product management today. And I was talking to my tech lead the other day. And I said to her, because now we have female tech leads, might I add. Like that for me is a very cool moment. Yeah. And I said to her, for me, product management is sometimes the oddest job because we actually have no skills that we bring to the table.
That's so funny that you say that.
like here,
That's what we whisper about product managers and they're not listening.
I'm calling it out, okay? But then for some reason, like we can take these, like, let's go to the business.
You're doing a job that nobody else wants to do. Quite frankly.
But like exactly like you've just highlighted with your career, I completely fell into this by accident. Someone asked me the other day, how did you get into this? And I was like, say 3 Hail Marys and hope it works out. That was my strategy. Don't know if it'll work for you.
Yeah. No, I'm the same way.
Back to the book. So now we have a good idea of, let's say, your path to get you, I mean, as good as it can be in an hour-long podcast episode. But I want to ask you, I ask each guest, what is your bookish hot take? And this can be anything. It doesn't have to be specific to your book. It can be maybe something you've seen on Instagram, anything along those lines.
I have so many, I think. I don't like tropes. I think that they're extremely reductive. I don't like going into a book knowing what's going to happen. I don't know. I think it's hard. I blame social media. It just forces us to market books this way. But like, I'm an old school girly. Back in the day, I walked into the kids' book section and I just read the back of the books and I decided which ones I wanted. Which I actually kind of wish I did more of now. I think now my perception of books gets very skewed towards what people are talking about. So like the bestsellers, and you miss other ones. But yeah, I don't like tropes. There's a lot of tropes that I also just don't like to read. I think my favorite hot take at the moment is the fake dating trope. While I've read plenty and I think they're fun to read, like this is actually not a knock at all on fake dating as a book trope, but like the idea of fake dating in real life is the most like sociopathic thing I can think of that someone would do. Like, who is lying to their friends and family about someone they're dating? Not even engaged to, not even married to, dating. Like, I mean, for a one time bringing a wedding guest, sure. But like these schemes where it's like To All the Boys I've Loved Before, literally one of my favorite movies. Insane. Like a man as much as the next gal. But I don't really like what it does to people who are reading this. And the gender essentialism is just one example, but I do think that impressionable people are reading these books. And I think everybody's aware that it's a fantasy and it's fake and it's like wish fulfillment in some ways, and it's not real and nobody would want this in real life. But I do think it's such a caricature sometimes that it's hard to separate what you are identifying as like, this is ridiculous and this is fictional, from like, this is a relationship pattern that I am absorbing. Because an example would be like, I'm 19 and I've had maybe like 1 6-month-long relationship, So I think like me reading these at 29, very comfortable with my sense of self and my ability to like speak for what I want and my needs, like it's fine. But like the young people reading these books, and I know there's people on my Instagram who are like 18, 19 who are reading romance books that I don't even like that much. I'm like, these are like so bad that even I, in terms of like some of these harmful behaviors. So yeah, that's, I don't know if that's a hot take or just like a public health crisis.
Let's go with both. I know that when I started writing, I didn't market with tropes because I was like, what the fuck is a trope?
Yeah.
I actually had to go figure it out. And I was like, oh, so it's kind of like a theme. Okay, I can work with that. And then I started like marketing with tropes and I was like, damn it, I have to do this now because it's getting better. So yeah, I kind of agree with you on that one as well, because I also sometimes look at my tropes in my books where I'm like, if I include that, I'm spoiling it.
Yeah.
But then I need to give something.
Some people write to tropes, I think. Like they'll set out like, I'm writing a second chance romance, which is great. I did not do that with Darker. A common theme with Darker is that I just started writing it and then a book came out 2 years later, like out of my ass or something. Like I did not go into it writing something that would be easy to pitch, easy to market.
Yeah.
Like I'm really just doing it right now with a song and a prayer, as you said. But Like I wrote it and now I'm at the point, and I was first trying to figure out tropes, and like my first trope post is so lame because I had no idea what tropes to do. And now I've just decided, I've seen people doing this, and so I'm copying them. And my tropes are all like, they're not actual tropes that are like common between books. It's like they're just like, you know, random things in the book that I want to call out that I think people would be fun. It's basically like a bulleted list. I'm like, this is what I'm treating my tropes as. This is how I've adapted to a trope world. But
when I wrote The Rule of the Damned, I mean, first of all, most mafia style books are romances. And when I did my first like coming soon trope, everyone's like, oh yeah, another mafia romance. And I was like, oh fuck. So I was like, okay, now I need to get myself out of this hole because it's not a romance. I don't write that. Good for everyone else that does, but writing romance is not my thing.
Yeah.
So then I had to take a different approach, which I did. But I mean, like one of my tropes is mythical monsters. I mean, that's not a trope. I was like, but now it is.
Story.
You know,
hey,
so
we're in like the wild west of indie authorship, and there's no rules, and we get to do whatever we want.
I did not expect was you also have an intense love for poetry. I've really got to figure out how to turn these AI reactions off because
so funny.
So I tried a few months ago. There was an Ellen Adger Poe kind of performance that came to Amsterdam. I tried that out. Dude was not all right there from what I could gather. But you seem to have a love for Emily Dickinson specifically. Now, I'm not sold on poetry. See, we can disagree on something. Yeah. But if you were to try and pitch me or anyone listening about why we should give poetry a chance, tell us.
I feel like the weight of the world is hanging on me with this question. Like, I mean, I think everybody should read poetry. I also don't think it's for everybody. I did just read a romance that was between two poets. So I feel like I'm fresh in my like love of poetry era. But I think like poetry, generally speaking, not speaking to any one poet, your real estate is so much more limited. So the words that you choose have to be absolutely perfect. So it's just like this, you don't have this luxury that you do in prose where you can just wax poetic, ironically, for like pages. So I think that's something that it's like you read a poem and you read like the perfect word in the perfect place. And it's this like magical moment for me. But again, I recognize not everybody has that feeling. But I think like I read like Shakespeare's poetry. It's written in iambic pentameter, and I read I haven't actually read that much Shakespeare other than like the required reading, but I've read a lot of Roman poetry or like Latin poetry, and it's written in I hope I'm not saying this wrong, dactylic hexameter. I hope I did not just flub that. It's a 6 count meter. Iambic pentameter is a 5 count meter, but you can't write English in hexameter. Like it's just not possible, which I don't know how any of this works. I don't know about like the mechanics of like verse poetry, but it's fascinating. But I think like in Latin, I learned about, ironically, not in English class, like in Latin class, I learned about a lot of like literary devices. Like, I mean, metaphor and simile are like very common literary devices, but then there's other ones like synecdoche, and in Latin, they actually, because the word order isn't, you can play around with, we called it word picture in class because there's not a real word for it because you don't have it in English, but it's like, let's say you have like a preposition, like say this tube of moisturizer is like in a bowl, the words you could put in to like tube of moisturizer bowl, like you can form a picture with the words, which is like just fascinating. So I think like those are things that you can't really get in prose, especially not English prose. Like really beautiful moments when someone uses like the perfect simile or metaphor to describe something that just makes you see it in a completely different way. I don't know. It's just like, it's kind of like magic to me. So that's why I love poetry. I like free verse. I don't really like, I'm not a huge rhyming girl, but I mean, I'll enjoy a rhyming poem as much as the next person. Is just, I think my heart's with free verse. And that's what I used to write in high school when I was an emo, moody girl writing poems. And Emily Dickinson in particular, very ahead of her time, very weird, very gay, very obsessed with death. So a lot of things that are really admirable to me. But yeah, she was just really strange. She was just this like strange old lady who just wrote at her desk in her room all the time, and she was kind of a shut-in, and she was in love with her brother's wife, which is pretty fucking metal. So and her brother's wife, many argue, was in love with her too. It was not one-sided. But yeah, Sue and Emily. Yeah, so I don't know. Emily's just very cool. I feel like I loved her in high school, and then the Apple TV show of her life like definitely got me back into her, because I hadn't really looked as much into her like her life. I'd more just read her poems, but yeah, I think her subject matter is just really fascinating. It's a lot of nature, a lot of reckoning with death. She was writing during the Civil War, so she was writing during a very turbulent time in American history, and it comes through in her words. Which is, yeah, I just think it's cool when you can like feel things that you know objectively were happening, but you can feel like the emotion and like the atmosphere surrounding them like through someone's work. They should definitely, if you like Emily Dickinson, you should read E. Cummings. He was really another great poet. So there's like classics like Yeats I really like Yeats. And other things that are on the tip of my tongue. I feel like I have more recommendations for poems specifically, because I never formally studied poetry. I've never really gotten to know like the body of someone's work. I mean, Emily Dickinson, it's been like more self-study, but yeah, there's a lot out there. I mean, Keats and Mary Oliver is really good too.
Good to know.
Yeah.
I do want to ask a bit more of a personal question, Rebecca. You've recently shared some medical news that I don't want to say derailed, because that's not the right word. I almost want to say threw you a bit of a curveball.
Yes.
Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that and what happened there and how you're dealing with it?
Yeah. So I have breast cancer. I don't know. I was diagnosed in the fall, and I had kind of been planning to self-publish this summer on a very similar timeline to the one I'm on now, but I had been planning for that, and then I had a wedding and I got married, and the few weeks before that were like crazy. Nothing was happening really with publishing, and then 2 weeks after my wedding, I got diagnosed with cancer, which I didn't even know happened to 29-year-olds. I thought, I don't know. Breast cancer to me was something that happened to women in their 50s who have signs about wine in their kitchen, and their names may or may not be Karen or Sandra. It did not think it would happen to me, which is, that's not how life works. So, I got diagnosed. Everything stopped, like literally everything. I wasn't online for like, I want to say 2 or 3 weeks. I'm kind of the person who needs to process things a little bit in a vacuum. I told some friends after a week or so. I told one friend the weekend that I found out, because we were supposed to hang out, and I had told her I was getting a biopsy, which, maybe looking back on it, don't tell people that you're getting a biopsy unless you're prepared to tell them what the results are if you don't want to hang out after. But her mom had just gone through breast cancer for the last year. So she was very understanding, and she was one of the first people I talked to about it. But yeah, so basically I was kind of like, I was not in society for a bit. I was going to the hospital like every day for different scans or more biopsies or meeting new doctors. Things were really busy. And then I had a surgery like literally 2.5 weeks after my diagnosis. So it was just all hands on deck. So basically things did get derailed. Like they're back on track, but like everything was completely paused. I just went into like survival mode. I had to make like really hard decisions. I had to make them in like a week, which was it's still crazy looking back on it, I decided to remove my breasts, and I had to decide that in a week, because we were doing surgery first, which is a good thing. Like I was grateful that I was able to do surgery first, but then it's like, you have to make these decisions really quickly. And then then after that, I had to get ready to start chemotherapy. And then I had to do fertility preservation, because when you're 29, you don't have kids, you won't like risk your ovaries doing any chemotherapy. So, you know, I had to do that. And then everything just got really, really just messed up in like my head and my timeline. And then the fog cleared after my fertility preservation. I think this was actually when I was like already had started chemo. And for the timeline for everybody keeping up, I'm 9 rounds into 12 rounds of chemo. And so after a couple rounds, I was finally, fog was clearing from everything I had just done. And, you know, I'm in like a very structured routine of treatment. And I was just like, you know what, what is time? Like, nobody actually has it. Like, who knows what would have happened if my doctor hadn't randomly found this lump during an exam and it was completely unrelated to like anything I had gone to the doctor for. I mean, it wasn't unrelated, but like I didn't go there because I had symptoms or because I felt a lump. But yeah, so I just decided like time is just precious. And I was like, still maybe thinking like, maybe I just won't publish. Maybe I'll have to go back to querying, change my plans that way. And then I was like, I could be gone in 2 years. Like the 2 years it takes to get this book out, I might not be here anymore. Which is something that I think everybody really has on their doorstep at the end of the day. But people who get diagnosed with cancer really reckon with it, because mortality. And it's not like the fear of dying. It's like the fear of not like being around anymore and like not being able to like do what you want to do, you know? So anyways, I had all these feelings, and then I was like, I'm just going to still publish. Why not? I was like, if anything, I'm just going to like make this a part of my story and a part of this journey that this book has been on. And then I set my date, which was a big step for being able to like start the publishing process, like setting up a Kindle pre-order and all that stuff. So I set the date, and then I just started full steaming ahead. And I found that it helped give me like a lot of purpose. I think like it was hard to think about in the first month and a half of this because I was just trying to survive day to day. But, you know, I think there's something to be said for like having these dreams and these ambitions making you human and making you feel human. So I was thankful to have gotten back to that, because I was not sure I would be able to even think about it. I just want to live, you know? So.
Yeah, you know, I wasn't going to mention this, but I know that you've been an incredible wealth of knowledge and I think comfort for me, because I'm obviously dealing with my own diagnosis, which is still super fresh at the moment. Yeah. And, you know, there's a lot that you said there that I just want to reiterate. What does cancer look like? I mean, if I hadn't said anything now, no one listening or watching would have known, because it literally doesn't discriminate. And for me, I happened to find a lump, which I was like, hold on, this is not right. Let's maybe just go rule it out. And it is a pretty serious diagnosis. Emotions was no one's guaranteed time. You don't, and you were telling me about your grandmother, who I still think she's incredible. And she's also been a big source of inspiration for me. And it doesn't necessarily take a cancer diagnosis to remind you that life is precious. Sure, you and I might have a different kind of approach to it, but it shouldn't stop anyone else from having the same kind of thought that time is precious and you've got to make the most of it. And I know that for me, I initially got into writing by accident. I'm sure you're seeing a theme with me there. And my first book kept me comfort through my last operation. And what I find during this time, as I'm busy navigating my own diagnosis, it's being able to dive back into the writing world that has really provided me with a bit of sanity. Having cancer is like a full-time job on its own, because the amount of paperwork and
I know you're in the Netherlands and the insurance situation is different, but like literally I had 3 weeks off work to recover from my mastectomy. And after the first week, I was probably on the phone with insurance or the fertility clinic or my like pharmacy insurance provider, like every day. And every call with insurance takes like 1 to 3 hours. And it was, I mean, you're on hold sometimes, but that was insane. And honestly, like I go to a big hospital, and normally they don't have a fertility area. So I had to go to like a separate clinic for that, which is part of what was causing all of my heartburn with that issue. But like, I'm like, feel very thankful that I go to a hospital that has like a very competent billing department, and like I have good insurance through my employer, which is again, unfortunate that it has to be dependent on your employer, but like I have good insurance. And yeah, it's insane. I mean, even just the doctor's appointments, like I had like I added a cardiologist to my team. So fun. Like a couple weeks ago, and like even that appointment, it was a short appointment. It still took like 2 hours out of my day to like leave work, go to the office, wait for the doctor, talk to him for like 20 minutes, you know. Yeah. Like these are time commitments, and I'm lucky that I'm salaried and I can like work around like the time off that I need to take.
I am a full-time salaried employer, so that's wonderful. But my husband gets paid per hour, and we need.
And the caretakers are doing a lot. I mean, at least my experience with my husband, he's not working. He had been working at a startup, and he was kind of like transitioning off of that. Anyways, so we're very lucky that he's kind of like in between things right now, and so he's literally doing all the cooking and the cleaning, and he drives me everywhere because I don't drive because I'm secretly a woman in the 50s and I just can't drive. So but it's like, I don't know what we would do my parents live close by, so probably my mom would do that. But like, yeah, it's a lot of work being the partner of someone going through something like this.
Correct. And I think, just with my husband as well, he tries to be at as many appointments as he possibly can. And his work has been so supportive and amazing. So like, we love them. They're incredible. Yeah. But we've also needed to have the conversation about, sure, this is a life-changing event, but how do we handle the finances? Because like, we still need money to go through these things at the end of the day. So you have to give yourself a moment to grieve what you thought your life would be.
Oh yeah, more than a moment. It took me, I actually think it was hardest before my surgery, because the surgery was a line in the sand. Like I was not getting that breast tissue back. So that, and then it's like, and it's also like, you have this reminder every day. Like every day I would look at my body and be like, this is not going to be here anymore. I wore like sports bras every day for those. Well, I was recovering from 2 freaking biopsies, so I was too sore to really enjoy my boobs right before the surgery, but I like couldn't. I was just wearing sports bras because I didn't even really want to look at them because, well, 1, they had given me cancer, and 2, like they were going bye-bye, and I couldn't really process that. So, and then after the surgery, I felt like a lot of peace actually, which I wasn't expecting, but yeah, that felt head fuck.
Right. It really is. And I think especially because I'm a bit older than you, obviously. Well, not obviously, not many people know that. I'm 36. And
still very, very young in cancer years.
Well, that's what they say to me, because I made it clear that we are at the point, well, we were now past tense, of we were going to start trying to have a child. And they were like, well, guess you better put that one on pause.
Which is like the hardest pill to swallow. That was really hard for me.
Yeah. And what's incredible about the Netherlands here is they were like, cool, we're going to send you to a fertility doctor to preserve your eggs. Now, as you rightfully said, I'm just trying to survive. And I'm like, okay, so now I need to make decisions about this. Yeah. And we spent, I think, about 3 hours there, because then we had to go get the drugs, because there's certain drugs you need to inject yourself with. And I think the amount of information that you get overwhelmed with, like someone calls you and they're like, cool, I'm calling for your appointment. I'm like, which one?
You're like, I have 5 doctors on my team right now, so you're gonna have to be more specific. A survivor that I talked to early on, who had been younger than me when she was diagnosed, she said that she put on a lot of makeup to go to chemo, and she just got really into that because that was like, she just had to do something. And she also chosen to go bald. So she was like, she was like, this is just my time to be bald, which I now wish I had just done. I'm doing this thing called a cold cap, which people do to try to keep your hair. And every day I have to walk myself off the ledge of not shaving my head because I'm like, I did this because you still lose some hair. So you still have really thin areas and you have bald spots. And yeah, it's just like everything about cancer treatment, and cancer just wants to take away your humanity. Even the steroids that they give you before the infusion, they make you break out, and you're like, okay, so I'm balding and I don't even have clear skin. Like, this is the worst deal.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I'm at the point, I'm now 3/4 into my treatment, and I think I'm hitting the wall in terms of my mood, and like, I'm really getting moody, like very easily. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to let myself be like a real pill. Like, apologies to everyone in my life.
It's but this is why I also think this part of the conversation has also been really important, because if there's anything I've learned with my diagnosis, which I'm sure you can relate to as well, is that a lot of people don't know how to respond or to react when there's a cancer diagnosis on the table. We're still the same people. We're not defined by our cancer. We're just like, cool, it's shit, no other way to swing it. But we still have hopes and dreams. We still have a life that we want to live for, and don't treat us differently. Still have these conversations with us. Still pick up brains on these topics, because you know what? If anything, we want a little bit of normalcy during this really non-normal time. So thank you for sharing.
I mean, I sobbed on the phone to every single friend that I called to tell. And I will say, the one conversation I had that actually made me feel better, no conversation made me feel better, except one where my friend, who is a boss ass bitch lawyer in New York, she was just like, and she's had family go through health things, like serious health things before. And she was like, what are the tests? What are we waiting for? Like, what are the steps? And I got to like draw out for her my little mind map of like everything that can happen based on like this test result and this test result. And it's like, that's what I like to do to stay sane. Not everybody's like that, but like it was like a gift that she gave me, like speaking to me like we were equals and like we were thought partners. And that's like, those are the moments that you need when everybody's just like cooing at you, like you've suddenly turned 80 and you're like, it's insane. I'm like, and everybody means well, but it's like, you don't have to tell someone else that something scary or something sad.
Yeah, we know. Trust me, we know that.
Very intimately familiar with this.
It's one of my friends the other day, she was moaning about, and I say moaning, like not really moaning, it was like venting about something. And she immediately like started correcting herself because of the diagnosis. I was like, don't do that. I was like, I want to be part of your life. I want to hear about this insignificant little thing that's happened to you, because number one, you're sharing it with me, which tells me I'm important enough to you. Number two, it's normal. That's the normal stuff I want to be included by. And sure, just because I've got a diagnosis doesn't mean the shit that you're going through is less important. Both things can be through at the same time. And by you treating me the same way you normally would have, that's what I want. And then she goes, oh, but I don't want to talk about me all the time. And I was like, I love you for that. I truly do. But sometimes I want to stop talking about myself because I'm pretty much over it right now.
Yeah, it's like I have to live in this life every single day. I don't need to. And I just downloaded 20 minutes with you on my medical test results. So like, let's talk about something else.
Exactly. What's an underrated fantasy book that you think should get way more love than it's getting right now?
Oh my God. Like a modern one or like of all time?
You pick. Question is,
can I have a second to go to my shade? Okay. I will say I read these fantasies. Oh, no, my chair's stuck. I read these fantasies that they're not like unknown, but Naomi Novik's standalones. Like I just read those last year and they blew me away. And I feel like they bridge a gap sometimes that I'm missing between fantasy and like literary fiction, where she writes at least those two standalones I can speak for, like they're written with a literary mind. And they were just like so fascinating to read. I don't think they're the fastest paced stories, but I would say like I read them and then I was like, wow, this is what we're trying to do. Like this is what I want to be doing. This is what a lot of books I'm reading are trying to do. So yeah, they were great. I have A Deadly Education, which is her like dark academia one I'm going to read after this, but I highly recommend anybody go check them out, especially if you like literary fiction and you're also getting into fantasy. It'll definitely scratch that itch.
I do touch on this through the podcast episodes, but we see the same books being recommended over and over again. And it's time to start breaking that mold as well. And let's start celebrating. And it doesn't have to be indie. It can be traditional as well.
They are traditionally published. Yeah.
So that's my point, is that there are so many good authors out there. And let's start giving them a little bit more of airtime. Than the same SJMs, the same Rebecca Yarros over and over again, which FYI, I love both those authors too. I'm not knocking them. It's just there's more authors than just the two of them.
I know there's a lot of authors that the books are arguably far less commercial than SJM and Rebecca Yarros, but they may ultimately give you more to think about in your life.
Well, you know, that's actually, I want to go back to why I put my hand up for your book specifically to be for it. I love all fantasy. I don't discriminate. My requirements are, I prefer action-packed. I do prefer a little bit more of a unique take. Sure, I love the romance part as well. I do, but where I personally as a reader start getting irritated is when we start going into fated mates, which maybe 5 years ago it was fine. But now I'm like, okay, I'm over it. I was like, give me people that fought for each other. Give me people that put work into their relationship and they're still in love despite that work. Like, give me something a little bit more relatable. And sure, maybe that's because I'm getting a little bit older now where my tastes are changing and I'm willing to accept that. But that's what stood out to me about your pitch for Darker Than the Starless Night, was that it felt different to me than anything I had come across at that time. And I was like, well, can't find anything on my TBR that's pointing to me. So can I read this one? So that was why I picked your book.
I'm glad. I feel like it's different because I actually wrote it before I really got into the Bookstagram space. Like I had read ACOTAR, and then I think I knew I could feel ACOTAR's like presence in the cultural zeitgeist, and I was like, this book had an impact on the world, and that's really cool. And so that was what made me, and it's fantasy, and I was like, I could write something in this genre. Like, this genre is fascinating to me, and clearly it struck a chord. But then I read like Song of Achilles. I read SJM's other books, and I read a lot, but I didn't actually join Bookstagram until a year ago. So I had written the book by then. Like, the version that you read maybe had a few scenes changed, but like the book had been written. So I hope it doesn't read like a lot of books out there, because I was not writing it in that world whatsoever.
It definitely doesn't. And I will go so far as to say something that you don't know about me yet. I generally avoid any books with Peaky Blinders as a trope. So
oh my gosh.
So the fact that I still wanted to read yours should give you a little bit of a... Yeah, I just think it's just certain things that I struggle with as a reader where I can't get into it. For me, that's anything period piece related, anything Peaky Blinders. I can't get into it. And
Peaky Blinders, but Thomas Shelby's a girl. Like,
no, but that's my thing. Is because I'd never seen someone do it that way before. Where I was like, maybe I need to try this way. And I love the whole like gender flipping it as well, because that's something I experiment with quite a bit in my books.
Yeah.
So like for anyone that hasn't read the Rule of the Dam, my Dracula is a female, just FYI. You know, and I love it when people push those kind of boundaries where how can we change common law that we are familiar with? How can we make it our own? What can we expect to see next from you this year in your author career?
Oh my gosh. I'm working on a contemporary romance completely out of left field. I know I'm like fully branded myself a fantasy author, but I'm actually right now when we're recording this, I crossed the 50,000 word mark, and it's a contemporary romance, so I'm only aiming for like 75, 80,000. So I'm really excited about it. It's become a cathartic outlet for cancer stuff because the main character is a cancer survivor, and I just wanted to write a story that a character I could actually see myself in now that I'm going to be turning 30 next year. As a cancer survivor, I thought I would make it out of my 20s scot-free, you know, with my breasts, but here we are. So I wanted to write a story about that. And the other thing that I'm working on is the sequel to Darker Than the Stars Night, which I know you are aware of, and I know you will hopefully help me with beta reading. My goal for that is to publish it next year, which is super ambitious given how freaking slow I am at writing and the fact that I'm working on like so many other projects. So that's the goal. I will hopefully have made more of a dent in this by June. I'd like to query my contemporary romance, at least like try to query it. And yeah, and then, I mean, it's anybody's gamble. I do think it will probably take me the rest of this year to finish those 2 books given my writing pace. But I have like some YA books that I started working on that are just kind of like percolating in the back of my mind that I might pick back up. Probably not. But yeah, there's a lot going on in this bad boy. But so, I'm nodding my head for anybody listening.
So I have this running joke with my editor that I currently have enough ideas to keep her fully booked until 2030. That's the actual date, by the way. I worked it out because she didn't understand how many ideas I had. I was like, well, if we work on the average of 2 books per year, it takes us to 2030. And she was like, you're joking. And I was like, no. I was like, I'm serious. I'm like, you are booked until 2030. If I don't come up with another idea between now and then, which is entirely possible knowing me. So I relate to that problem as well. It's very much an author problem. But Rebecca, if anyone wants to connect with you, where is the best place to do that? I'm assuming Instagram?
Instagram. I have a Discord server now. We have fun over there. I have a Substack is where I keep up with people like more long form over email, and like you get the updates first if you get my emails. But yeah, Instagram. I'm like always on Instagram.
Okay. I'll pop all the links in the episode description for when this goes live, so that if anyone is feeling called to what you're saying, they can just click that link and follow you and connect with you. But Rebecca, thank you so much for this episode. It has been so much fun talking to you, and you are freaking hilarious.